When we're rendering our scene, in addition to the photographic exposure and sun and sky control, the other major area we have control over is our rendering engine itself. We have a lot of control in the global illumination section in Mental Ray of how the light bounces in our scene. I'll run a quick render and show what it looks like currently and then where we can improve. With the render in the office nearly complete, we can see a few places that could use some improvement in how the light is bouncing. The direct sunlight on the stairs looks great, but up on the second floor, where the stairs meet up at the bridge, it's decidedly blue and there's some speckling going on. Additionally, where the bridge meets the far wall, it's a little bit flat, and this may benefit from some extra bounce in the lighting. The scene is workable, but it appears a little flat overall and could use also a little more luminous appearance. What I'll do is put up the final gather bounces to 3 right here in the rendered frame window. I'll go into my render setup, and in the global illumination tab, we can see that right now the final gather is at the default draft value. In final gather then, which is the bouncing and regathering of indirect light in the scene, we have a lot of control over the quality and how far that light reaches. What I'm going to do is push up that multiplier to 2, strengthening the bounce of light in the scene so I get a little more luminosity in the corners. I'll also add in a color contribution to tint that final gather so that in my bounce light I have a warmth. I'll bring up the saturation and swing the hue into the warm orange range. A little bit goes a long way, so don't put in a giant blue, for example, to get cool shadows and cool corners. Just a little bit will bias that color in a direction. I'll click OK, and then scroll down to my global illumination section. In the caustics and photon mapping, I'll turn on my GI, or photon mapping. And again, I have a multiplier with this, as well as a quality. I'll leave it alone with a multiplier of 1 and see how it goes. Now that I've made these changes, I'm going to run a region render and see if I can tell a difference in the lighting. On the area to render, I'll drop down instead of View and choose Region. I'll size out my region to be half of the image, and I'll click Render again. We can see a definite difference in the rendering. The shadows are much warmer, and there's a definite light bouncing into them. This is because of the increased contribution in Final Gather and also the secondary diffuse bounces. We're also seeing some speckling in here, and this is due to a couple of different things. First, we may be seeing some speckling in the Final Gather, especially in low light areas. What I'll do is scroll down in the Final Gather section and change my speckle reduction from standard to high. The other thing I'll do is check the number of samples on that white wall, as that seems to be where most of the speckles are occurring. I'll select that object, making sure I hit Escape to get out of the region render, and then pressing M for materials. You can either pan over and find that white wall, or eyedropper it straight from the scene. I'll get the material, picking the material from an object, and there's that eggshell white. I'll double-click on it to make sure it pulls up in the Material Parameter Editor, and I'll check the samples. What we're seeing here is that because it's in the Highlights plus Final Gather only, and there's not samples here, it may be giving me some speckles. I'll try it by turning this off and increasing the glossy samples to 16. I'll check Fast Interpolate and scroll down and interpolate this at half. This may be a little better, and I'll kick up the high detail distance on this material, putting in 24. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a tweak in the material, as well as in a render, to get that quality right and get rid of most of the dots. I'll try one more render, hitting Render Production, and looking at this region. The underside of the bridge is better, and we're definitely seeing a few less speckles, but the wall still has some on it. The other thing this could be from is actually from that terrazzo floor, where the shine is modulated so the chips in it tend to shine a little bit more. We could make this shine more uniform, and this really illustrates the relationship here between materials and lighting, and why we need both to effectively render in the scene. I'm going to leave this alone, because my other ally in here, in minimizing those speckles, will be a little bit of depth of field blur later. For now, though, tinting that Final Gather and increasing its strength gives me a much more soft and luminous scene, where I've still got good grounding shadows, but instead of going blue, they're nice and warm and really befitting the low afternoon sun.